All right, welcome to Move of the Day for round 4 of the Candidates tournament in Russia. And today we're going to be talking about how Grischuk spent over an hour, well over an hour on this move, knight e7. And I'm calling this Grischuk's natural Modafinil. But before we talk about Modafinil and what that means, let me just give a quick shout out to say that you should all join our YouTube channel here just by subscribing. Check out our Discord, ChessDojo on Discord, and then of course we're doing streams on Twitch. So there was this study that came out a year or so ago that really, I think, reveals a lot about chess and chess players, where when given modafinil, which I think is the chemical, this is just my layman's understanding, the chemical that's in a drug that's usually branded as Provigil, and it's got, I think, a different name in Europe, that when chess players were given this drug, they performed 15% better. The drama, however, was that there was a downside, and that the chess players who took this drug were far more likely to develop severe time pressure. Right? So you got 15% better even with this disadvantage of falling into time pressure. And the idea of modafinil is that really your brain is rewarding itself for doing the activity that it's doing, in this case thinking. So, and we've all experienced this as chess players, you get in some position and you just enjoy thinking about it, and it's what keeps us coming back again and again to just play, especially long games or thinking about positions on a deep level. So there's a couple players in this tournament who clearly enjoy thinking, and I don't know Alexenko that well, but just from the brief games that we've seen from him, he is spending a lot of time. And Grischuk has been famous for decades now for spending just an incredible amount of time on his moves. Definitely just is sinking into the position. And there's a number of top GMs I've seen doing this. I did a commentary for the Fall Classic last year in St. Louis, and Howell was a great example. The guy was like writing a novel on the positions where, like in this position, you'd think he already had it in his prep. So let me just talk a little bit about this position. We're getting a Berlin, and two players, Nepomniachtchi and Grischuk, are now using it as their weapon of choice in this tournament. And so far, no one's beaten the Berlin. This position would definitely have been part of Grischuk's preparation, because MVL himself had this against Nakamura in 2018. Now, I looked that game up. It was, in fact, like a blitz chess game played on chess.com, but clearly that's still going to be part of the preparation. So knight e7 is a very typical Berlin move. And these positions, by the way, I think are beautiful. I just want to, I'm in full defense of the Berlin, and I'm in full defense, by the way, also of draws. I think if a game is a draw, that is fine. I have my foes on this issue, and I think they're terrible for the promotion of chess, because for them, every drawn game is a terrible game. But this game, has, like a lot of drawn games, has a lot of drama behind it. It's not like the players weren't trying to win. And even though this, in this tournament, the Berlin has been draws, that doesn't mean it's a fighting opening. I find that the imbalances are very interesting, and people can become masters of them, as we saw in the original Berlin match, which was Kramnik beating Kasparov, using the Berlin to win the crown back in the day. So, 97, the guy thought forever, and now he's going to be in time pressure. And it's already kind of weird to be in time pressure with the Berlin, because you start off with the first several moves, you know, coming so quickly. Now, in this blitz game, MVL played what I consider the natural human move. against Nakamura, he played g4. And that makes sense from just a human perspective. Why? Because you want to put your pawns on the light squares so that your bishop works on the dark squares, right? So you control all the squares, and you limit the black's dark square bishop. MVL, of course, is one of the most prepared players in the world. I think Fabi maybe is a little bit better, but okay, he's up there with Fabi in terms of really preparing all of his openings in depth. And he plays this very weird move, h4. It is, in fact, the computer's first choice, this move, h4. After g4, the computer likes knight d5 for black. In fact, it likes it a lot. In any case, I'm watching this game. I don't know anything about the computer move, and h4 just looks kind of weird because you're giving up the light squares. And let me just put this, frame what the struggle often is in the Berlin. And it's definitely the case here. And obviously I'm saying something that MVL understood, which is that you've got that extra pawn on the king side, and you need to make some kind of drama for black on the king side. You're never going to really hurt the guy on the queen side. And black, of course, is going to use usually this unopposed bishop to create counterplay. And we're going to see that in this game as well. So, in fact, we should say after the move h4, the value of the light square bishop for black has gone up even more. So, what's interesting about Grischuk, and a lot of players who are very prone to time pressure, Ivanchuk comes to mind, is they can play very good moves for a long time whilst in time pressure. But time pressure is nobody's friend, and so the effect of knight e7 is really going to come later. So the next moves, first of all, from MVL, it's all part of his prep, right? So let's go through this. Knight d5. Now he's ready to sack the pawn. Rook d3. There's a choice now for Grischuk. Does he play knight a4 or knight d5? Okay, he plays knight a4. It seems okay. Rook f3. Now here's the beginning of the drama. We're going to play against the f7 square, and if we can crack that thing, then there is going to be a problem for black. Bishop d5, rook f4, knight b6, rook ef1, rook g6. Now I want to just stress how beautiful this move is from a time pressure standpoint, because what black is aiming to do is, if he ever needs to sack the exchange on g5. And the trick about sacking the exchange that's fun and interesting is that then you have a complete light square blockade, and there's not much you can do. For example, king h2, I think you can just take the thing and then do something like king e7, or and rook it over. The knight will come to c4, and you have a nice light square blockade, and there's not really much to do. So rook f5, and bishop c4, exclam, h5. And here, you know, all these moves, what do we got here? This is move 28, and right, 10 moves really from the time in which he's spent so much time. So Grischuk's played great moves up until this point. Now, one of the things about this is the next part of the story. When you play somebody and they've got a minute left to move, remember, they get 30 seconds extra every move, but they got a minute left to move. It's very hard to control your own feelings and to not play fast yourself, because you feel like you're pushing them against a wall or something like that. The truth is, of course, is that the advantage of having more time is not that your opponent will run out of time. It's that you can use your own time to create devastating problems for your opponent that they can't solve in time pressure. And so the interesting thing about this game really is that in this position, rook h8 may be a small inaccuracy, but you know, what is white-black going to do? a4 is a good move to put pressure on black. Black is playing with less than a minute at this point. Knight a4, probably his best move. But here, white could have posed really strong grief to black. And what MVL needs to kick himself for, and this is something we see at all levels of chess, is that when your opponent is in time pressure, that's the moment for you to really sink deep and to think about what's going on. So it's almost like he needed Grischuk's natural modafinil to keep him thinking in this situation, to enjoy thinking. Because here, I believe he had around at least an hour left, to the time control. So there's an hour left for the next 30 moves. And obviously, this is a position where, yeah, you want to think about it. Instead, he played bishop a3 very quickly, after which he's still going to have practical chances because Grischuk is so low on time. But let me just show that rook e4, and what MVL in the postgame said, in the postgame interview, is that he missed that he was really threatening rook takes c4. And the sad thing about this is that, first, this is devastating. For example, let's say king e8, rook takes c7, because you're going to lose the g7 pawn, because this kind of drama is happening, because this drama is happening. It's also sad, though, that because really this is White's whole idea, is to come crashing down through the middle of the board and start messing with the black king. Obviously it's easy to sit back and talk about this in terms of like something I can turn the computer on. But what's easier, I think, as a critique, and this is really applies to not just MVL, but every player out there, is when your opponent's at time pressure, the way you get him is to pose grief. And bishop a3 quickly played is not going to work. And one simple reason is that c5 is a bonus for black, and the bishop on a3 is arguable. Okay, so let me just show a quick trick that I thought was instructive about this rook e4. First of all, the only reason not to play rook e4 is if b5, or to think about it, is if you, for whatever reason, you don't see rook takes c4, like he said. So a thing to understand about bishop a3 is if bishop e6 now, then you can make a snip and say check, and it's actually all over. For example, king e8, rook f3, the knight on a4 has to move, and we're coming to f7, and it's completely devastating, right? This king is, completely devastating. Example of what White wants to do against the Berlin. If you play the Berlin, this is the way you're going to lose. Now, after bishop a3, however, it's not the same idea isn't going to work, because now bishop e6 does in fact work. There's no bishop g5 check. And let's say something like this. You can win the two pieces, but it's actually better for black at this point. So I want to show one more position. Black is incredible pressure. Here he makes a mistake. He could just play something like this, and it seems like he's fine. But he again lets the white pieces in, and now it's not simple. Again, Grischuk under a minute. a5, and White had to go for it here, and it wouldn't have been easy to make the following decision. And I do want to say, with my human eyes, I was not looking at it with the computer. With my human eyes, I did see the following variation. And let's just go through what it would have been. Check to the miserable king, down. And let's just say the obvious. Grischuk is going to say that the a2 pawn, the a pawn, is going to give enough counterplay. Something like that. Incredibly hard position to evaluate, but the dream for White is to say that the connected passed pawns on the king's side will be so strong that if I have to give up a rook, it'll probably work out. Then the hilarious way, I turned the computer on, and the computer's just like, well, White's slightly better. Well, I don't know what that means in this position. It's clearly something's going to happen, and it's very hard for a human to understand, like, at least for me, how the white pieces really will organize. But in any case, this was the last chance, And the game petered out to a draw here pretty quickly in this kind of business. Everything got liquidated. So a huge miss by MVL. MVL would have gone up +2. And we were talking, before on the show about how MVL is one of the people who has a shot here. And this is definitely a big miss. So just to say, going forward, the tournament is wide open now. Ding is -1 and Fabi's equal, and there's just a couple people on +1. Everything's still going to happen, and this was the big miss of the day. So until round 5 tomorrow, I'll see you guys then. Bye-bye.